everybody, welcome to the channel. It's great to see you here. So we are Paragon Designs, or PGX for short. Basically, we're a group of GFX artists, and we decided to make this channel so that we can make videos to help other GFX artists like you guys improve, and to help teach beginning artists more easily. We're based out of dueling network forums, and our members are myself, Dan Setsuno-Sane, Discord, Zoizite, Reaction God, D-Halo, Palm Top Vampire, and Relian. And we'll all be making videos along the way to help you guys out and help get you better. And we don't claim to be the best, but we are trying to help you guys get better, so please bear with us. And with that said, away we go. So let's start with what GFX actually is. GFX is short for graphics, or graphics art. And that's basically all art done through programs generally like Photoshop, right here, or GIMP, to manipulate images and create new ones and add effects to photos and stuff like that. So here are a few examples of some GFX work. This one is made by Reaction God D-Halo. Here's a piece by both me and him, a collaborative piece. Here's a piece by Relian. And then here's a piece by my good friend Cody Brown. So that's a basic idea of what that's a basic idea of what GFX looks like once you really get into it and once you start learning more and getting deeper into the effects and the techniques. So this video, as the title says, is basically your beginner's introduction to GFX. So I already told you what it was, so now I'm going to teach you just a couple of things that every beginner should know, and that every artist who's been doing it for a while does know, and it helps them in more ways than one. So let's start with renders, because without a render you don't have art. So what is a render? Well, a render is the image that you use to create your piece. So here the render was Raiden, and this one, it's this character here. That's our render. Now, our render is an image without a background. The background is transparent. And when you're looking for them online, you'll know it's a render because all renders are in PNG format. So that's a big hint if you ever look for them online. As you can see, this one has no background. It's completely transparent. And we need that because that way you can just slap it onto your background, merge them, and create one seamless image. So let's go over the do's and don'ts of renders so that you know what's a good one and what's a bad one. So let's start here. Here we have example number 1. And this is actually a fairly good quality render, but it's a bad render for one reason, and that is cuts. Now, a cut is when the image has been cut off in a way that makes it impossible to use properly for other art. See how it's cut on all 4 sides here, 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 and here. Now, because it's cut like this, you would have to make a canvas specifically for this piece, which means that you wouldn't be able to really see a background or use that many effects, which kind of detracts from the overall value of your GFX. A few cuts here and there are good, like say we only had a cut at the top or at the bottom or even at one of the sides. You can manage that and you can kind of manipulate your image so that it goes away, it's not prominent, you can still have a great piece of art. So as a general rule, if it has more than 2 cuts, it's not usable, and even then 2 cuts, it's sometimes pushing it. So try and find renders that are as whole as possible and only have 1 cut, or try to find renders that don't have cuts at all. Now, here's example 2. And I don't really think I need to say why this one's so bad, but I'm going to have to explain it anyway. This is a very low quality render. See, it's cut off, but even if it wasn't, this render is unusable because it's so small. This render size is very, very hard to work with, and you shouldn't work with it. When working with renders, it's always easier to scale down than it is to scale up. If I have a a 300 by 1000 size image, I can scale that down easily and still keep it high quality. Whereas if I have something like this, which is 350 by 267, I can scale this down, sure, but if I needed to make it bigger, I'd start losing quality, and that's very, very bad. So avoid renders if they're too small. It's typically up to the artist to decide what is and isn't too small, and the more art you make, the more experience you'll get, and the better you'll become at telling what is and isn't high quality. And this is our third render. Now, as you can see, like I discussed with the first example, it has a cut, so it would be usable there, and unlike the last render, it's fairly high quality, so there's no problems there. The reason we don't use renders like this is because of something that we call a double focal. When you make your piece, you want the viewer's eyes to go straight to the render. You don't want them to be distracted by anything else. You want them to see the render first, and then you want them to go around to see everything else. So the reason this is bad is because it has two characters. It has Luca and Miku, and because they're both there, if I tried to place this render into an image, your eyes would be distracted. They'd keep switching between Luca and then going to Miku and then back and forth, and you wouldn't be able to decide who to settle on. So, as a rule of thumb, avoid renders that have more than one image in them because they create a double focal and they detract from your work. And here we have example number 4 of what is a bad render. Again, this is a high quality render. It only has one cut. It's a single focal. The reason we don't use renders like this is because it has extraneous images. In this case, these cards all here, and then they're even down here on the render themselves. Now, normally, this wouldn't be too bad. We could just take an eraser and erase the cards. But because they're on the image itself, we can't do that. If we erase all these cards up here, then these cards down here look out of place. And if we keep all these cards up here, then we're distracting your eye away from the real image. So, again, as another typical rule of thumb, don't use renders that distract from the image itself. So typically you're going to be using renders of characters and people. So if they're holding something, that's fine. If they're wearing something big, that's fine. If it's something like an angel and has wings, that's fine too. But if it has something that's not attached to the render, or it's really getting in the way of seeing the render, don't use it because it'll just cause problems for you. So now we come to a do. This is a render I myself have used in the past. It's a fairly good render. Now, as you can see, it only has one cut. It's a single image, which means no double focal. It has no extraneous images, and it's good quality. It's a fairly large file. I don't know the exact size off the top of my head, but it was fairly high quality. So it's easy to scale down, and it doesn't need to be scaled up. So this is a good render choice to use. You typically want to look for things like these. As another general rule of thumb, you probably notice that in all of these examples, none of them have prominent outlines. You really don't want a render that has a big black or white outline on the edge, because that means somebody didn't render it very well, and those renders just don't turn out well. So avoid using them at all costs. So I've gone through what GFX is, and I showed you what renders are, and I gave you the basic rules of selecting a render. Now I'm going to tell you the last thing that I'm going to bring up in this video, and it's possibly the most important thing you can ever remember about GFX, and that is ripping. So what is ripping? Ripping is taking another artist's work and claiming it as your own. That's a big no-no. Very bad. Don't do it. I give, as a general rule, these signatures here, I gave credit to their creators. I'd never claimed that I myself made them. I'm not ripping. I'm giving credit to the original owners, which is always good, and I'm not using it for personal profit. That's another thing about ripping. It can also violate copyright, especially if it's something you find on Deviantart. So be very careful about that. If you're not sure, ask the artist for permission if you can use it or not. Typically they'll say yes, so long as it's for your own personal use and you don't sell it. But just be very sure of that. Don't just take something and say, oh hey, I made this really cool piece, when you really didn't, because that'll get you in a lot of trouble. And so, with that said, I've covered everything we're going to in this first video. I hope to see you guys again next time, and I hope this was helpful. Well, this is Densetsu no Sanin. I hope you've enjoyed your first lesson. See you guys later.